Good morning. Welcome back to the pod. Matt, Kim, Peter, Sadahin.
What's up, guys?
We are, last week we did not upload an episode. That's on me. We had some technical difficulties. The sound was kind of messed up. And then I was moving. Didn't have the time to edit each, like every 3 minutes. I had to cut it out. And I couldn't do it. So I apologize.
No
but
worries.
We're back.
Life is life. I think for anyone that's out there, they realize that just there are ups and downs in life. Sometimes you go through busy seasons and sometimes you go through relatively free seasons. This is one of your busy kind of ups and downs right now. Well, right, with all the moving.
Well, it sucks because we've missed one episode for moving. And then we missed another episode for moving.
So we can keep it in that category. if you're moving, then it's totally okay to miss
It's not okay. I'm sorry, everyone. But we're back this week.
He just needs 30 hours in a 24-hour day.
That's true. If I had 30 hours, I'd be extremely much more efficient.
Yeah, but you'd have a lot more gray hair too.
I have a lot already.
You'd fill up that time. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I would too.
No downtime. But the move is going. It's going. It's a lot of work moving, man.
Yeah. I am not envious. I am not wanting to be in your position at all. I get it.
And we've totally bought at, I don't know if we're buying at the top or at the bottom or what, because interest rates are crazy.
Oh,
crazy.
Interest rates are unaffordable is the word. It's nuts.
I'm fortunate because I had a lot of equity in my previous house, and I just basically rolled that into the new house. So that worked out. The values of the house are very similar. So it wasn't like an upgrade or a downgrade. And we got a little more house, but we're 30 miles north. So anyone knows the further away you move from the city, the better house you're going to get.
You get more bang for your buck for sure.
So I'm giving up convenience and travel time for maybe a little bit nicer house, better location. But value of the house is very similar.
And a happy wife.
But all the money, the difference is going into interest. Because we were paying like 3%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
don't tell me you're above 8.
It was supposed to be 8. The rate we got locked in, original rate that we got proposed right before we closed was 8.28. And then I bought down a rate, a point.
Yeah, I get it.
So I'm still in the 7s. That's still a lot of damn interest.
7% is a lot.
For a house over 30 years?
Considering over the last 2 years, there were points where you could get it close to almost 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when it was at 2.5,
yeah,
I was like, oh, we should refinance and get the better rate.
I refinanced at 2.8, 2.7, I think, something like that.
And our mortgage guy was like, oh, you should just wait. Like, it's going down. Like, all right, we'll wait.
Oh, yeah, he screwed you.
And then fuck.
It's all good. You got a nice new house now that you had not even slept in yet.
That's true. We haven't slept in the house yet. We're still staying at my parents' house because there's boxes everywhere. Moving is just, it's so much work.
Yeah.
And then you realize how much just crap you accumulate over time.
So what I'm hoping to hear also is that this was an opportunity for you guys to shed some weight. Like, that's like one of the silver linings to moving is that you can be like, bro, I've been holding on this thing for 7 years, never did shit with it. Finally, I can just have a good reason to throw it away.
So the problem that we have is that the whole home buying process was like so last minute. Just the right house, a couple doors down from my parents became available at that just exact time. So we had to pack our stuff, get it ready to be shown, sell our house, move, all of that, like super fast. And because of that, we just had movers come and just take out like 75% of our house because we had to show our house to sell it, and we weren't ready to move yet. And in doing so, they just packed everything. So when we move, they just bring everything back.
Oh, dang. Well, it could be one of those opportunities where you open up those boxes and you're like, okay, we moved it, but seriously don't need it, and you can throw it away then, hopefully.
So now I got another problem. I'm in one of these neighborhoods with these crazy big HOAs. I can't just put a dumpster out there.
They won't.
I mean, I gotta get approval.
Yeah,
I gotta sign a form. I gotta go through the process. If we want to change the color of our shutters, we need to fill out application. It's $75.
I don't know. Is it too early to go into the fact that HOAs are unconstitutional?
They are extremely unconstitutional. They are corrupt. And
like, it's your land. It's your land.
It's not my land, apparently.
Well, you understand my point. It should be your land. You bought it, and so now you have another abstraction of authority over you that says, yeah, you bought this place, but now you have to bend the knee to our rules, and you can't plant a little tree just for fun. You have to go through the entire approval. And if you don't do anything by approval, then they slap you with a fine.
And
crazy. And the worst is that HOAs are often run by terrible Karens. Like, dude, I've had my fair share, so I get it. But like, there is a very particular personality that enjoys being the God King over HOAs. You know what I'm saying? It's the only time they can flex authority because they live there, they work there, and they can walk the sidewalks and they can point out like, this guy's not doing it right. I noticed that he just did this to his fence. I'm gonna run. Oh gosh,
it's kind of like the people who run for public office.
Yeah, but it's worse because it actually affects you.
If anyone from a HOA is watching, I love you guys.
Well, I don't love you guys. I don't know you, but I think you're unconstitutional, and probably the fees and the dues are completely outlandish.
There is almost 3,000 houses in my neighborhood. It's a huge mega neighborhood. So if you have 3,000 people at an average of 3 people per household, it's 10,000 people in the neighborhood. It's a city.
Must be nice to have authority, Karen, over 10,000
So
people.
imagine how much power that these HOA people yield.
Oh, they love to flex.
It's so much power. I can't wait for like election season.
How much is your HOA?
I think it's like $1,500 or $1,800 a year.
That's not bad.
No, it's a huge. I mean, it's 3,000 houses. Yeah, they're working off of buku bucks.
Yeah, but if you think about
and they do a good job.
If you think about it, the amount of money that is accrued over time. Yeah, they're shelling out some of that money for landscaping, for utilities, like peace. We get it, but a lot of those HOAs can run on a huge surplus.
Yes,
they're just milking you guys, and it's just normies, regular NPC people, Karens who are looking at this bank statement. They're like, damn, like we're sitting fat. We got like over $1 million of dues in here. What do we do? I mean, come on, bro.
Peter does not live in an HOA neighborhood.
I used to, and I moved out. And before that, I used to, and I moved. I'm so over it. I want the absolute freedom, Matt, and I think this makes sense to our audience and to you. I just want absolute freedom to do whatever I want with the house and the property that I bought.
Oh, you anarchist.
I don't need control mechanisms over that. I could tell you stories for days when I would cut down a tree. I've cut down multiple trees, and I've had Karens come to me and call the police on me saying that I'm not living up to the city ordinance or city statutes. It's like I live outside the state, the line, the city line. So technically, you have no jurisdiction here. I've had to have those conversations with cops. It's crazy.
It's such a big HOA, and
I'm not trying to make things worse. I have a general trajectory where I can make things worse in conversations. But HOA over in Matt's area, guys, we love you. You guys you serve a grand purpose in the great design of God's plan. So clearly, my brothers in Christ, you guys are good.
and we have trees on our borderline that I want to remove, and they're like, "You can't touch those. Those are our trees." I was like, "Oh,
really? Already? Or so?"
And I'm like, "They're kind of halfway on it." So now I gotta go like fight it and appeal it, and I gotta do all this. And my wife was like, "Do you really have to do this? We just moved in." I'm like, "You gotta let me do my thing. I can't not say something."
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things
where you're impeding in my space.
Well, yeah, because if you don't set the precedent now, a little bit later, it's harder to bring up those issues for cause because they'll look at you and say, "Well, you've been having no problems for the last year and a half. Like, why are you causing a fuss now, Matt? You should have caused a fuss on day 2. Then they're like, okay, this guy's a sharp person. That's what you want. You want the HOA people to look at you as, sophisticated, smart, done a little bit of diligence, saw the loophole. We don't like it. They're taking advantage of it, but okay. Like
this is who they are.
Yeah, you want that. You want that because you're not a wet noodle. I mean, HOAs are used to people being wet noodles and having no spines. And they're used to walking all over them. So, I don't know. This is just me, guys.
HOA, love you guys.
You're doing God's work.
So, and then let me tell you what else I did this week. we were walking in the neighborhood. It was my wife, our 2 dogs, and my dad. We were walking through the neighborhood, and my wife was holding Nugs, our French bulldog, and my dad was holding our Labrador, and I was pushing our daughter's stroller. Our French bulldog just runs across the street while we're walking and chases after another dog.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, I gotta go get it. So I leave the stroller on the sidewalk and I run across the street to go grab the dog. I don't know what happened, but this stroller, I guess, started rolling forward.
No, not like this.
And it fell face flat onto the street.
Oh, so it jackknifed.
Yes. With our daughter strapped in.
So the imagery that's in my mind right now is your strollers running away like one of those movies from the 90s, right? And it's rolling downhill and it jackknifes and the baby's face is the stopper.
Yes.
Okay. So I was correct. That sounds like terrible news.
Well, I don't know why we're laughing. It's like when you hear some bad news and you like laugh.
Well, it's kind of like when you see a fat person fall. Like, you know it hurts, but damn, it was kind of funny.
And she fell and she was crying, obviously. And my wife is livid. This is like a week ago now.
Oh.
And she's still mad at me, of course, because she's bruised in her face. And I didn't see it happen because I was chasing the dog.
Yeah.
And she's like, how are you going to leave her on the sidewalk? And
that's a trap. That's a trap question.
I didn't know what to do.
How are you going to leave her, bro?
I just stopped the stroller on the sidewalk. When I left, the stroller was not moving. I turned around and the baby is face flat in the street.
Wait, your parents were there though.
My dad was holding the other dog.
Okay. So what was he doing? He was just like...
He was like, oh. You know, everyone's like, and my wife is just like up to here, right? She is so mad at me.
She got the flames coming out of her head.
She is just fuming from every direction.
Yeah, that's on you, dog. She has every right.
Yeah, but it's kind of but Will, it's kind of a trap though, because like let's say the baby cart hadn't moved and
Matt's got to eat it.
And the dog got hit. She'd ask you the same question. Why'd you chase after the dog,
yeah.
bro?
Yeah.
Like it's a trap.
Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Not wrong.
And
so how's the baby? The baby's good.
She's good. She's just a little bruised. I think she's gonna be fine. But I realized that in pressure situations that involved my child, I am so not cool.
Oh, what does that mean?
Meaning,
Like you lose your shit?
like I'm in like panic mode.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, what do we gotta do? What do we gotta do? What do we gotta do? And my wife's like, shut up, sit down, get this done.
Ooh.
Right?
Chareso.
And in any other situation in life, I'm like, you need to calm down. Let's figure this out. Right? That's how I am like 99.9% of my life. But then when it involves my daughter and something goes wrong, even when she fell and she had to get stitches, I was like, what do we do? Do we have to put ice on? Do I have to do it? And I'm like, and she's like, go get this. I'm like up and down stairs. And she's like, you need to calm down. I am so not cool.
So this is fascinating to me because I think it's probably a two-pronged consideration, which is number one, you're emotionally attached to the blood level with this amazing daughter of yours, so that's a given. But number two, these are all wholly new emotional experiences.
Yes.
So you can give yourself kind of a pass there, right?
I am not typically a hugely emotional person, right? I feel like I'm pretty even keel most of my life.
Oh, so you
something
come from a
goes
drinking
wrong.
background, huh?
Something goes wrong with my daughter. I am just like a chicken with its head cut off.
Really?
I have no composure whatsoever.
Well, that's good. It's good because as things crop up, as you will see, there will be more
No,
events
I can't
like
do anymore.
There will be more events like. Have you broken any bones?
I've never broken a bone in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've broken 5 bones. So for me, the bone breaking.
Whose bones were they?
Well, well played. I've broken 5 of my own bones. So my daughter has already broken her clavicle. My son has already broken his foot, and I think his toe. So like, maybe I just come from a really rough household. But for me, those types of things, I was on the other side. For Actually, my wife and I are pretty even keeled too. Like when things have happened with my kids, I'm usually the one that looks slow and lethargic because I'm overly calm.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the type of guy. I'll tell you a quick story, not to take over, but like when we were living at the Atlantic downtown, there was a pool there, and we were hanging out in the pool. My daughter was, I don't know, maybe 3 years old at the time, and we were sitting on the ledge. She was kicking her feet. I was just sitting right next to her, and my other friend was sitting on the other side of her, and then she falls in. Now, you probably, I'm assuming, if your daughter fell in, you'd immediately jump in, rip her out of that water, pick her back up, right? I was the guy that was just like, damn. Well, she'll be fine. And, you know, she's like under the water looking up at me like, and I'm just like, she'll be fine. She's got a couple seconds. And my friend ends up jumping in and pulling her out because I was moving so slow.
Yeah.
And it's for me, seriously, Will. I'm the type of guy, if I don't sense the imminent danger, I will literally mentally go through the process of what I need to do. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, that seems like forever, but it's not that long.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like two seconds the most. But it was still long enough where my friend was kind of like, you gonna get her? Like, you gonna get her? Like, okay. And then he gets in and gets her. So I'm one of those guys that under pressure, I'm overly calm where it seems like I'm not actually processing anything, but I'm deeply processing stuff. So I get it.
It's so crazy how like kids change like your perspective and how you act. Because in any other situation in life, I don't feel like I would have been that way. But all rationale just goes out the window.
Well, it just shows how important this connection that you have is, right? It'll move you outside of the normal. It'll move you outside of your usual behavior patterns. It's that important, it's a good sign. It's a good sign. Well, but you still need to get your shit together.
Yeah. Get it together. So actually the video from our daughter's birthday party came out, which you were at.
Yes.
And let me see if we can watch this. It's like 5 minutes long.
Is this?
Can you?
This is the video. Oh, so this is the compilation.
Yeah, it's actual video that he made.
Nice.
He did a really good job, I think.
Wasn't her picking up? Why don't you narrate this? Some people might not understand what she's doing.
It's like 11 or 12 million views.
Yeah.
So this is her picking kind of her future and what it signifies and other things that she could do. And she picked the golf ball, which makes Daddy super happy.
Yep.
You know, and thought it was really cool because like a good mixture of people. You know, obviously it's a very Korean tradition.
Yeah.
And it was a relatively diverse crowd. And I think it's amazing to like mix and bring two cultures together, to bring
multiple cultures together.
Yeah, to like show what the Korean culture is. It's something that we value. We speak Korean at home, English at home. We do both. We expect her to be able to do both. And we adhere to a lot of the traditional Korean traditions, but
so as we're watching this, talk to me about what culture means to you, because you're certainly more culturally Korean than I am. And so tell me tell me and tell the audience, like, what are these types of imagery and this type of culture? What does it mean to you in terms of your family and your family dynamic? Let me give you is culture important?
I think it's extremely important.
Why?
Because it gives you a reference of where you come from, where kind of what makes you who you are. And I think you just need to know. Like, it's something that I've always been interested in, kind of knowing my past, knowing my history, knowing how even our family ended up here. It's one of those where if you like history, you have to know your own history, right? It's kind of similar to the journey you went where you just had to know, right? I think you just have to know. You know, I think one of the things that a lot of now is that they want to ignore where people have come from and want to erase and make everyone into kind of one culture.
Yes.
And I think that's not the right way to do it, because understanding where you came from kind of shapes who you are, how you think, how you perceive the world. And I think it's so much fun that each culture has its own way of doing
Such an
things.
awesome opportunity.
You know?
Oh, I love this couple so much. It has been such a blessing
Was that
to
me?
hang out
That's
with
you.
Matt and help him with his new passion project. We spend so much time talking about family and talking about family values, and Joa is a perfect example of their love, their relationship, and I cannot wait to watch Joa grow up in this wonderful, value-driven family. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Oh, that was good. Oh, I think one of the things that's really powerful and that you just spoke to is culture grounds you to a beginning. It grounds you to something that's firm. And it might seem ephemeral for me to say, but with the way that the world is moving to being cultureless, and that we're all part of some bland amalgamation of nothingness, that removes a sense of identity. It removes a sense of belonging. And I think what culture does, especially within familial culture and cultural traditions, I think specifically, I think we can. It wouldn't be hard for anyone to say that cultural traditions are eroding. Would you agree?
I agree.
And I think that's a negative. I
Yes.
think that's a net negative. When cultural traditions erode, then it's so easy to latch on to the themes of the day, the flavors of the day, the trends of the day. And those things are ephemeral, fleeting, not lasting. But deep cultural traditions that's come from hundreds, thousands of years in the past, those have deep significance, and I think it gives a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and in some ways, a sense of trajectory for people's lives. I mean, imagine a world where you grow up and you have no traditions. What are you latching on to? Mostly, probably just materialism and consumerism, which is all about just self-interest, selfishness, narcissism, right? So I think if I were to summarize everything that I just said up in one sentence, it would be this. Without culture, you end up with a narcissistic society, right? With culture, you look back and respect the past, the history, the godfathers, the grandfather, the great, whoever, right? And you lend some respect to what they've established and what they've created so that you could be where you are today. But if there is no culture, then the only thing that you can latch onto is materialism and narcissism. And I think if you think about, let's just say, the far left today, their god is materialism. Their god is narcissism. No more evidence than the blue-haired sheepdogs that we see who find victimhood in everything because they have no solid grounding. They have no culture in a lot of ways. And if you were to say, well, what is the culture of the blue-haired sheepdogs today? It is the person talking on the TV. That's their culture.
Themselves.
Yeah, and themselves. So I think culture is eminently important. And I think the erosion of historical culture is something that isn't talked about that much.
Yeah, it's such a tough thing, right? Because as cultures mix, because our backgrounds are from Korea, and Korea is a very small country. If Korea were to stay only Korean at the rate of reproduction, Korea as a country would no longer exist. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
If you want to keep it homogenous and only Korean, you have to live with a certain amount of racism, right?
What do you mean by racism?
Meaning you have to convince the entire populace that other cultures are not that great. You have to. Otherwise, they're going to mix, and then you're going to lose what Korea is, which is mostly Korean.
I would challenge the way that you communicated that. I would say that good cultures look at other cultures and say, it is good and right for you to have your own culture. We can respect it as it is. It's not to put a qualification of better or worse, but it's you should enjoy and appreciate your culture for everything that it is we will appreciate our culture for everything that it is, and that mutual respect will allow those cultures to grow independently and with some intermingling for intermarriages or these types of things. But the qualification, I don't think respecting cultures requires us to create a qualification of a hierarchy where one culture is better than the other. I think it's more of a.
But then, how would you ever combat? Okay, then why can't I marry someone that's not Korean? Because we respect them and they're equivalent. This is the problem, right?
Well, I think it's really those types of decisions are really familial, right? They're really.
But I mean, you know, right?
I know
what
what you're talking about.
Like, I'm not saying they should, but what I'm saying is, if you want a small country to remain a homogenous, mostly Korean country, how do you stay that way if you're so accepting of other cultures? Because the kids are going to grow up going, hey, like, other cultures are great.
I think I'm struggling with the word accepting. When I think of the word accepting of other cultures, I think of like I lived in Korea, right? So when I lived in, so let's say we're Korean and we're in Korea, and there's like some black people, some Indian people, some white people, whatever. They're all coming into Korea. We can respect their cultures, and we can appreciate them for who they are, but we don't. I don't think accepting them and respecting their cultures is a dilution on our own. What it sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that acceptance leads to dilution.
Correct.
Of the native culture. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because how else do you prevent people from?
I would agree with you there.
And that's the hard part of it.
I think there is a dilution over time of the core culture of that country. This is a great segue that we can move into the Israel-Palestine stuff. But what we've seen is that multiculturalism as a huge kind of theme over the last 2 decades or decade or so has failed. And we might say, well, Peter, why has it failed? And I think what we're seeing across the world is the reason why multiculturalism has failed is not that we're trying to integrate or dilute cultures. It's that the values and principles and worldviews of these different cultures are at odds with each other. That's the biggest issue. And so one could look at that and say, it's not that we're not accepting. We've accepted them. They've come in. They've come in droves into our countries and changing the cultural landscape. But there are cultural values, worldviews, principles that guide those cultures that are at odds, and that's where the friction really is. Is that fair?
No, I get it. But if you want to retain a nation and a people, how do you do that? You without promoting hatred for another side.
Yeah, it is a tough balance because you want to accept people that want to come into your country,
but are you accepting them when you say, "Hey, we accept them, but hey, daughter, hey, son, you can't marry them." It becomes a really odd double standard, right? It's very hard to explain that. Hey, in order to retain our culture, we don't want you to intermingle with them. You can hang out with them, you can work with them, you can be friends with them, you can't marry them. And it's like, wait a second. How do you make that determination? And then now all of a sudden, but if you're so accepting and everyone intermingles, then the core of what a people was eventually will disappear.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think, man, it's one of those things where it will take so long for the dissolution of the native culture. I think that's important. The native culture to dissolve into this amalgamation of multiculturalism, multi-diversity, and where you have a melting pot of sorts. And we've seen that hasn't worked, especially in major metropolitan cities all across the world where there's been a massive immigration movement to the inner cities. And those people will look at that and say, oh, it's a melting pot. They're not wrong. It's a melting pot. But what is the core culture in those cities? The answer is you couldn't put your finger on it. Because over here is this culture, over here is this culture, over here is this demographic, over here is this demographic. They clash here and there. And so in a lot of ways, I'm actually sound like I'm arguing against any type of multiculturalism because because the more that these cultures mesh and they combine and they merge together, the less of the native culture will be. And that's just the nature of the beast, I think, over time, is that cultures will shift and change. And if you continue to immigrate and bring people into these native countries and these native cultures, those cultures will disintegrate and dissolve over time. It's just kind of the expected assumption that's of what happens when you have a massive influx of people.
This is a really tough discussion. It's a tough topic.
It is a tough topic. And I wouldn't say that I have all the answers here. I think what we're trying to do is bifurcate two particular advantages, which is culture is important, native culture is important, but also personal responsibility and decision-making is important. And so where those clash is, I'm accepting of you and your culture.
It's so hard.
Right? You can live in the house next to me, no problem.
Yeah.
Like peace, bro, no problem. But I will tell you, I have particular leanings based on my culture.
Is that racist?
No, it's called an opinion. It's called a perspective.
Because
I have particular leanings that I would like my daughter or son to marry a particular culture that I am native to, that I appreciate more. I think that's completely within the right of individual liberty.
Because you're married to a Korean woman.
Yes.
Will is married to a Korean woman. I am married to a Korean woman. Actually, my wife was born in Korea and came here later in life. So her native language is Korean. I'm going to say almost most Korean Americans I know are married to other Koreans.
It's probably an accurate statement.
Right?
Because if it wasn't true, then the Korean culture would have dissolved by now.
Well, they're getting my point.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I think I've come full circle as I've kind of mentally communicated this out loud.
It's so tough.
But at the same time, individual liberty grants us the freedom to make decisions based on our own biases, based on our own leanings, based on our own our own priorities, right? If you prioritize your culture over someone else's culture, I find that to be completely acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that, with prioritizing your culture over someone else's. No, I don't think it doesn't need to be a zero-sum game, which means, hey, I prioritize my culture, so therefore it's a negative on your... No, that's not how it works. I prioritize my culture, that is what it is. There is no opposing side that if that's the problem with politics, right? The problem with politics is if I say, hey, I'm a conservative, then the assumption is that you're anti-left. No, I'm conservative. Just leave it at that. There are a lot of great things that there are a couple, maybe there's one or two good things from the left. I keep it's going down. That's what I was thinking about.
We just get squeezed into the middle.
It doesn't need to be a winner loser equation all the time. And I think what the news and the politics and the social media likes to do is make it black and white. Right? I don't think it needs to be black and white here. I think there can be a vast spectrum of gray that is completely acceptable.
But we've also had this discussion where it's our flexibility in certain values that has brought us to where we are today. Maybe if we were less flexible, then there'd be less variance and we'd be less gray area.
Well, Japan is a great example of this, right? Japan is considered one of the most ethnocentric, and sometimes they also use this other word, xenophobic, first world countries in the world. Right, and so people might say, well, what does that mean? Ethnocentric means that they love Japanese culture, and Japanese culture is very insular by nature, and they like to keep their traditions going strong. Anything wrong with that? Not at all. It's the xenophobia that is placed on Japanese culture that brings up the negative. Now, what is xenophobia is that you're afraid of or you have issues with other cultures. I don't think Japanese people are xenophobic. I think by design, their culture is very insular and very communal and very family-based, very much like Hispanic countries in South America are very family-based. But to call them xenophobic, I think, is going too far. I don't think xenophobia, to me, means that there are policies in place that particularly and specifically discriminate against other cultures just because of their cultural heritage. I don't see any countries, well, there's some, but most democratic and first world countries cannot be, in my opinion, ever categorized as xenophobic. They just prioritize their cultural, their cultural history and their cultural constructs far more than others, and I think that's completely within their rights.
And Japanese people are interesting because they consider, even if you're Japanese American, they consider Japan home.
Oh, yeah.
So even if they work here, their goal is to go back. And if you are Japanese and you live well, there's not a huge interest, but I got to go to America.
It really
they like it there.
They do.
Because they're taught since they're young that for them, being Japanese is the most important. Koreans, as Koreans, we haven't gone that route. Koreans try to be a little more accepting, trying to be a little more liberal in their understanding of the world. And when Koreans leave Korea, they don't have an intention of going back, which is a hard part for Korea also, because all the diaspora, I just learned that word.
Diaspora.
All the Korean diaspora don't tend to go back and help the country they came from.
Yeah.
Which is why Korea it seems really great on the surface because you have the brand names like Samsung and LG and Hyundai and Kia. But as a country, they're not doing that great. And they need more of the diaspora that has left to come back and help out.
Many countries suffer from what we call brain drain, right? Where all the brightest youth and the brightest minds of these countries, because opportunities in the country aren't as good than outside the country, you end up with a brain drain. And Korea is certainly one of those countries that has experienced over the couple decades now brain drain, where all their best and their brightest come over to America, go to Stanford, Yale, Harvard, whatever, and they don't come back. And so they don't bring back all of their expertise, technical know-how, and ability to help improve the native homeland. And so a lot of countries suffer from this. I mean, we're seeing this now over in Europe. There's massive amounts of brain drain out of Italy, for example. This also coincides with the aging population of every single country in the world, where the younger generations, first off, there's not enough of them to support the older generations, but the younger generations, the smartest and the brightest of them, aren't coming back home. They're staying in other countries. And so this is a cycle almost of death, and a death knell for many countries out there. And you pinpointed this earlier with Korea. I don't want to get too depressing here, but most countries in the world will, from a statistical trajectory today, will not be here the next couple of 100 years because we're not replacing the population enough, and we have brain drain and all that stuff.
And I see a problem in the ones that do come back, because the ones that leave, they come to the United States to go to university, and some stay here because they find opportunity. Some do come back, but the ones that come back bring all the liberal university knowledge and culture that they learn, and they bring it back, and then they become the leaders of society when they go back because, hey, I studied at Yale, I studied at Harvard, now I'm a leader. Oh, and by the way, this is what they do, so this is what you need to do. And that in itself creates this crazy problem.
Yes.
Because you have a inherently very conservative culture in society, and the leaders are sent out to learn the absolute most liberal ideology,
Western values,
and brought back, and then now they're at a clash. But if you are the normal people and you have these Harvard educated people coming in, it's like, hey, this is how you're supposed to do it because this is better. Like, well, he must know better. He's from Harvard.
Yeah,
and that creates its own weird cycle.
Well, being Korean, we have seen the liberalism of Korea over the last 2 decades. It's really apparent.
Yes.
And I'll just use one example, and there's no judgment call on this. If you want to say that I'm creating judgment on it, I'm just telling you what I observe. I will tell you, in the 90s, if you were to see a sitcom and they were to kiss in a sitcom...
Impossible.
Well, yeah, it was basically softcore porn, right, at that point. But now we've moved to today, 2023, where we have trans, gays, lesbians, broken families all over the place, sleeping around. You know, it's
normalized.
It's been normalized, and you might say, okay, well, Peter, what's your gripe? Well, maybe it's time for Korea to upgrade to Korea 2.0 or Korea 3.0, and need to get off your conservative high horse. Well, what was wrong with not kissing in a movie back in the 1990s?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that then. It's traditional values of Korea have eroded exceptionally fast.
Yes.
I mean, Korea is almost a petri dish of experimentation for the Western world to see how fast Korea can be the #1 most like America country in Asia.
I mean, I think that in Korea, they test everything they're going to do here in the United States. It only gets tested there first because you get 30 million people in one city. So if you roll out any new idea, you can find out how the populace reacts to it instantly.
Yes.
And then you can roll out to 350 million people later. So we've seen what it means for people to get on cell phones and to have connection all the time. And how easy is it for people to just give up cash and go digital? How easy is it for people to be controlled by their movement and be given the right? In Korea, you can only, depending on the type of license plate you have, you can drive on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, right?
Yep.
What that means, what's the pushback when you limit movement? All these things that we fear here in the United States, we can almost see what the repercussions were in Korea.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and Korea was one of the first to begin beta testing vaccine passports.
Yes.
A couple years ago, which really made me sad in my heart. It really made me sad.
And the pushback was minimal.
Oh, it was almost non-existent.
At first, they were like, this is bullshit. You can't do this to us. And like, well, you can't do this and this. Oh, it's inconveniencing? Oh, fine, we'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you figure out really fast how far you can push before people are like, this is too far.
Remember when they were promoting snitching on each other?
Yes.
Yes. Wow.
Where were you? Who were you with?
Yeah.
I need names.
That seems almost like communist China.
And people were willing to do it quick.
Yeah, that's some Big Brother shit right there.
Yeah.
That's when your kids going to indoctrination camps come back, snitch on their parents, and the saddest part is not only do they snitch on their parents and send their parents to jail, but the kids have no emotion about it. They're just like, this is what Big Brother told me to do, you know?
And it's so tough because I want my daughter to understand traditional Korean culture, things that we've been doing for thousands of years. At the same time, as she grows up, she's like, well, they do things like this now. And how do you make that difference, right? How do you separate saying, well, Korean culture back then was okay. Korean culture now, you can't do that. It's such a, culture is so tricky. Because who makes you the arbiter of truth? You know, especially to your child. Right. How do you tell them? Old culture is okay. New culture is not okay. You know, you have to respect if you're a Palestinian, they took your land. If you're modern day Palestinian, you're supposed to figure out how to live together. And you're like, whoa, which one am I supposed to do?
Well, I'll go back to your first question. It is absolutely your prerogative and absolutely your right to be the propagandist for your kid. You have 100% absolute authority to tell them what values you want to instill in them.
The ultimate indoctrinator.
You should be the ultimate indoctrinator. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. You should be that. Now, whether what you're telling your children clashes with the societal norms of the day, that is how far you go right or left is going to be the amount of dissonance and conflict your child's going to have. Because your child, if you're really extremely conservative, then your child's going to have a lot of friction and conflict with their peers because their peers are going to be over here on the left. And it's going to be like, well, my parents tell me X, but the reality tells me Y. So there needs to be, I think, a healthy explanation and context to kids as to why these traditions matter and why maybe they're different today and why it's okay for it to be today, to have changed. But there are reasons that we value X and reasons we value Y, and this is why it matters to us. And I think at the end of the day, it ends up becoming a personal decision.
If you are Palestinian or Israeli and you live in West Bank, which is a mix.
Oh, yeah.
This must be really confusing for them.
Well, yeah, because you have older generations who have different cultural norms, different cultural expectations, and have gone through different and more shit and more regime change and all this type of stuff than the younger generations. And the younger generations, in many ways, they just want to get on with life. Yeah, right. They want to go to school. They want to get a job. They don't want to have bombs blowing up, regardless of which side you're on. And so, not only is there a culture clash, there's a generational clash, and not only a generational clash, there's a historical clash. And so you have all these confounding and at odds with each other worldviews and experiences that the problem is that they're smashed together so tightly that there's no way of avoiding it.
If you were, let's do a couple examples.
In America, we're so decentralized and spread out. Here's the analog. We're so decentralized and spread out. If you want to ignore the news, you can turn it off. You can go away. You can go to a place and never meet anybody. But if you're living in some place like Gaza, Palestine, like you can't escape from the reality that there's other people on the other side of the street that might kill you or might not like you for just the fact that you look a certain way.
So something really interesting happened to me this weekend. Obviously, we talked about I was moving. So pretty much Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, leading into Monday, I wasn't on the internet. I didn't read the news. I didn't know what's going on. Nothing. 4 days, pretty much completely separated from all the technology. Do you know what happened?
No.
Absolutely nothing. It's still the same.
You mean the world's still spinning?
World is still spinning. It's still flooding of negative news. And life is pretty much the same as it always has been.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so hard to get separated from that because we consume and we consume and we consume. And we do this, so we talk and discuss on these topics all the damn time. But the reality is that the world still goes.
Yeah.
That your life and your world is actually smaller than you think.
Oh, absolutely.
And the globalization of technology makes us feel like we're so involved.
And so connected.
But the reality is, we're not.
Yeah, we're only as connected to others as the amount of attention you put to it. Right? If you don't put any attention to it, then you can be completely disconnected from everything if you'd like.
Okay, question. What if you were Israeli? Let's just do some role playing. If you were Israeli.
Or Jewish.
And your kid wanted to meet and marry a Palestinian.
An Arab.
How would you handle that? What do you think?
I mean,
considering the traditional context, considering your culture and what you were taught and believed and raised to believe, and with everything else going on in the world, how do you even say, can't?
Well, I have an easy answer. The answer is, daughter of mine, son of mine, you're an adult. You can do as you'd like. I can kick and scream. I would hope, as a kind of little bit of context, I would hope that my raising of my daughter or my son over the 18 plus years, 20 plus years, has created mental models, worldviews, and principles and values that guide their decision making. And I would hope that the cultural inferences and the cultural values that we've instilled would help be part of the filter of the decision making, and so that we would desire and hope that they would marry someone that is culturally compatible. Where there's value compatibility and purpose and vision compatibility. But at the end of the day, if I failed at that, my indoctrination of my children, and they choose to marry into a culture that is completely different from the culture that I'm used to and the culture that I grew up in, number one, and number two is at odds with the culture that I have, at the end of the day, I have to allow them to do the adulting themselves. I would be probably a little bit hurt, and probably, to be honest, I'd probably be a little bit miffed about it. I'd have, and you know me, I'd ask a lot of questions. Why? Help me understand.
Leading questions.
Right. Why? Help me understand. What's the decision-making process around this? What are the principles and values that he has or she has? Right. I would ask these types of questions, but I would ask these questions of anyone, right? Regardless of whether they're a different culture or not. And so at the end of the day, it would be my child's decision. I can be happy or sad about it however I want, but at the end of the day, how I choose to respond will be a reflection of my character more than anything else. If I blow up, then it shows that I've lost my shit and I didn't really, I don't have the discipline, or I'm not the man of integrity or man of maturity that I say that I am.
Because and I guess making the leap and comparison to Israeli or Jewish and Palestinian and Arab, maybe it's not even necessary, right? If you
have a daughter.
And if she wanted to marry a white guy,
yeah,
I don't know,
or an Indian guy, or a black guy, or an Arab guy, it's all the same. They're different. The fact is that they're clearly different cultures than you.
Because it's so weird, right? When you meet a Korean person, a Korean American, and they're married to someone that's not Korean American, it's like the leading thing that people say. Oh yeah, she's married to a white guy. Oh, he's married to a white girl. It's like one of the most important things for people to reference.
It's
and lead
almost an unfortunate anchor. I understand.
It's so weird, right? And I have a lot of cousins. Most of them have married Korean women or men. And I have one that just married a white guy. And he tries his best. He's an amazing guy. Fantastic. And he tries his best to understand and be a part of all the cultural reference, Korean cultural reference things as he can, as much as possible. But he wasn't raised that way, so he will never understand fully. He's just trying his best. Amazing. But he will never. And therefore, their kid will be even further separated from it. And if your goal is to indoctrinate your own children, like how do you indoctrinate them? It's so weird. It's such a tough thing.
Well, I actually appreciate this conversation a lot, Matt, because within this conversation, I can tell that there's a personal yearning from you for a future outcome and a wondering in the way that you're communicating to me. There's a wondering, because you have a daughter. There's a wondering of like, how the fuck is this shit going to end in the next 25 years or whatever, or whenever she gets married in the next 20 or 30 years or whatever.
Because I don't feel like I'm a racist person at all. I love all people. I don't care where you're from, what your background is, what your culture is.
That's just a fancy way of saying Matt hates everybody equally.
All the same. But as we've discussed, when in dealing with my daughter, I panic.
Yeah.
And I am not as rational as I would in other situations. And I've married a Korean girl, and I've never thought in my life that I would not, which is the weird, crazy thing of, right? I've never thought, maybe I'll marry someone that's not Korean. Like, it's never concerned. Let me ask you this.
What other races have you dated? Did you date?
I've dated like other races, other Asian, white, whatever. But it never occurred to me that I would marry anyone other than.
Where do you think that came from?
Indoctrination? I don't know.
Do you think it came from an indoctrination? Or, if I can expand that out, or is it just because of a simple biological nuance, which you can't control, which is simply, I'm more comfortable with people who talk like me, look like me, and act like me, which isn't a negative thing. The radical left would look at us and say, "Oh, that's racist." Brother, I'm more comfortable with clothes on than without clothes on. Does that make me an anti-clothes racist? No.
I don't mind being naked.
Well, I do. I know that I look far.
Walk around the house commando.
Commando?
Before, baby.
Oh, there's
Not anymore.
I don't want to have that in my back of my head. But you understand my point. Like, for my personal preference is I look far better, superiorly. I look so much better with clothes on than without clothes on. So guess what my preference is? My preference is to talk with people who have clothes on, right? And so I think it's too far of a stretch to say personal preferences can become racist. I will defend this point, no matter what anybody says. Personal preferences are personal preferences. They're innate in you, and sometimes it's almost impossible to fully communicate, narrate, or expound on the reasons why you have that preference. Like, why do you have a preference towards one food or another? I don't know. I just like it. Sometimes there's cultural nuances that are just like that, and so I would take argue with this idea of, is it really indoctrination, or is it a natural implication of who you are and what you look like and how you communicate and the things that you've been exposed to? Is that create a natural preference or a natural leaning towards a particular person or a particular demographic or a particular feature set in a woman or a mate? Maybe. But that doesn't make you a racist, doesn't make you a worse person. You have personal preferences that you cannot explain. And so I think there's a broader spectrum here that we have to accept, which is sometimes people just choose people that look like them, and that's the only daggone reason they do it. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. That makes sense?
Yes. But
let me put it this way. I don't think, you tell me if I'm wrong, that you ever, when you were thinking about marriage and you were thinking about who you're going to marry, you wrote on a wall, or you made a mural or a painting, or you wrote it down in a journal, or you made it explicitly clear to all your homies, I will never marry anyone except a Korean girl. You never did that shit?
Well, I never had to write it down because in my mind, it was a given.
So where did that given come from? That's my point. It's almost unexplainable. And you might say, oh, it's a combination of a multifaceted, culture, experience, parenting. Okay, great. So there's 1,000 reasons why that could be. Is that a problem? I think that's where the social commentators get into deep water above their heads, because they say it's a problem that you have these natural dispositions and natural preferences. And I would look at the person and say, why is that a problem? I like hamburgers, you like hot dogs.
Well, I think that may be the importance of culture and traditional cultures, doing these things like the Tol, having these Korean traditional holidays that we adhere to and we celebrate. Because maybe the culture side of it is the indoctrination. If you become familiar with a tradition that you do every year that they only do in Korea, not other countries, and you meet someone that doesn't understand why you're doing it, all of a sudden, they're different than me.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the indoctrination. Maybe that's the importance of culture, because that's what keeps you forward. And that's what keeps you connected to people that are similar to you. Right. Again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I know that was my preference. And I don't know how it turns out, because if everyone were to shy away from culture, then we are eventually going to be one group of people.
Yes.
And then a one world order type of situation makes sense because everyone's the same.
Yeah. I think that's actually the
Is that the design and the goal?
That's the express design. If we were to overly simplify, and so let's just sit on this. If we were to oversimplify culture, I've actually had this mental exercise years ago. If we were to oversimplify culture, culture is just a behavior pattern. Think about this. Like, why did you celebrate X as part of your culture? Oh, my parents did it. My parents' parents did it. My parents' parents' parents did it. It's like, why? My parents did it is the answer. So if we oversimplify culture, culture is just behavior patterns, consistent behavior patterns that you grew up with, right? You did dor, you did, I don't know why this came to me, Peparo Day, 11/11. You did like, your girls' day, boys' day, parents' day, right? All these are things that you just did. As a child, you never questioned them. They were just things that you just did. Is that culture? I think that could be defined as a very overly simplistic view of culture. But if that is what I don't see that as indoctrination. It is your family and your family's family and their generations, they chose a particular behavior pattern that just so happened to be some type of tradition or event on a particular day every year, and that's just how the clock moves. That's how the machine moves for that culture, right? And so for you to appreciate that behavior pattern that you've lived with your family for many, many years, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? And to want to find other people who had similar upbringings and similar experiences, I think is not a bad thing, because it allows for commonality, it allows for shared understanding, and allows for alignment on things that if you didn't have them, what would you have to... What commonality would you choose? If we go to the extreme, the one world order, where there is no culture and all cultures are equal, well, then the only thing that this one world order culture will ever latch onto is materialism. And so we all know that Christmas is when you buy toys. Or we all know Easter is when you look for eggs. We all know Halloween is when you dressed up. Actually, you don't dress up these days. In Halloween, you don't wear anything if you're a girl, right? That's like the thing, right? I remember Halloween back in the 80s where you couldn't imagine seeing a naughty nurse. You know what I'm saying? But did they have naughty? They probably had naughty nurses back in the 80s. But so I think it's better. This is my judgment call. I think it's far better that traditional, ethnic, I think that's important, cultures are maintained, as opposed to the dissolution of world cultures when we're all the same. And the only thing that we can look to is Big Brother and the retail ceremonies that happen every year. I think that would be a terrible, terrible future for us to live in.
Separation of culture and ethnicity, I think it's fine. I think you're more than allowed to stick with who you know and your own if you choose to do so. But the problem with that is that if you are white and you hang out with other white people, they're like, oh, this guy's a white supremacist. Why is there that line there? That's so difficult too. And if we were white guys and we're like, oh, we want our daughter and our kids to only marry white people, they'd be like, holy shit, these guys are the worst people in the world. But then is white an ethnicity? That's so weird too.
Is white an ethnicity? Yeah.
Like
there's the whole Caucasus, the Caucasians from Eastern Europe, you know.
If you're Irish and you're like, I want my kid to marry Irish, everyone's like, oh, that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of America that are so mixed at this point that your ethnicity is American now.
Well, America in the grand scheme of the world is a statistical anomaly.
Yeah.
Like
it was a statistical anomaly. Now they're trying to roll out this concept to pretty much everywhere.
Well, yeah, but I always like to say that America, and this is the first time I've said it on this podcast. I'm surprised I haven't said it previously, but I always look at America as a great American experiment. That's what America is. America is this amazing experiment of where we had settlers come over here. You can argue the timing, fuck all that noise. But we had settlers come over here. We had growth in the East Coast, right? We had issues with tensions of North-South. They expanded out west. And now we're here in 2023, where pretty much all of America at some level is populated with people of all ethnicities, cultures, creeds, et cetera, et cetera. America is truly one of the grandest experiments set on the world stage today. Because if you compare America's heterogeneity, wow, that's a big word, their multiculturalism, America is one of the biggest melting pots of any other country out there, right? If you compare America to Japan, or America to Korea, or America to Iran, or America to Switzerland, or America to any other country, this is a grand experiment of a meshing of cultures. And I think one could significantly create an argument that say that this experiment is failing because of this intermixing and almost this forced function of you must mix, you must accept all other cultures. Now we've gone to an extreme where we're not only accepting other cultures and all of the good and the bad, we're actually highlighting fabricated cultures that no other culture in the world even recognizes as a culture. Let me explain. I've talked to so many people in other countries, Japan, Korea, Europe, whatever, who look at America as literally going insane because we have abstracted and created subtypes and subcultures that do not literally exist in any other countries. For example, trans. Trans is a culture now.
Yeah.
Right? There are countries that literally are laughing at us, especially in Africa. They're laughing at us. They're like, what is this made-up manufactured culture, this mind virus that you guys have created, right? This is not a real culture. What's the historical significance of the trans culture? Well, there was a guy in like 1960 who was a pedophile, and he decided that this was the right idea. Well, so you're saying the whole idea of this trans culture is like, what, 50 years old? That can't even hold a candle to the thousands and thousands and thousands of years of Chinese culture or Asian culture, or European culture. Those are real cultures. And you might say, okay, where are you going with this? America, as this grand experiment, because we're smashing all these cultures today, we have to manufacture culture. And the manufactured culture is not good culture. It is an ephemeral, vapid, yesterday, today's highlight and today's reel, today's flavor of the day. We're experimenting with subcultures, and the subcultures are not working out.
And America is such a large country with so much diversity that I don't think that's fair to say that as America as a whole either, because there's a huge portion of America that's like, dude, our culture is America. We may not have thousands of years, but we have hundreds of years. And this is what we believe. This is how we were raised. And we want to keep it the way that it was, because what's wrong if Koreans are allowed to think their kids can only marry Koreans, and if Japanese are allowed to think their kids can only marry Japanese, and Iranians are allowed to believe that their kids marry Iranian, every other culture is allowed to do it. Yes, our culture isn't 5,000 years old. It's 300 years old, but that's far enough for me to remember. My family.
Yeah, when was the last time you heard an American say that they can only marry another American?
And why can't they?
They totally can, but you don't hear that shit, though.
You can't, though. Because you would be crucified.
You think so?
I mean,
I think American.
It's one of those things that they think in their head, but you can't say it out loud.
I don't think anyone's thinking that way, Matt. I cannot conjure up any good argumentation for someone, let's say a white person,
saying I don't want my daughter to marry a Mexican. I don't want my daughter to marry an Arab. I don't want my daughter to marry an Asian. I just want them to marry.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the other side of that, which is I'm a white guy in Colorado, and my parents were white, clearly, in most cases, and my parents came over the Mayflower, or whatever. Like, what I'm saying is I have never heard a white dude say my kids can only marry an American.
Yeah. I
have heard parents say, not too fond of my kids marrying a Mexican or marrying a Colombian or marrying a Japanese, whatever. It's rare, but I've heard a couple statements like that in my life. But I've never heard, and this is my point, I've never heard someone prop up American culture as this amazingly profound mental model and worldview that encompasses who they are with such thickness and such historicity and such, I've never heard someone prop up American culture as this powerful foundational thing and saying, my kids, my daughter, my son can only marry an American. I've never heard that. And I think because of the lack of richness in American culture, maybe it's just because it's a time issue, there's not thousands of years of American culture, maybe that's why America doesn't have a defined culture that you can pinpoint and say these are the hallmarks of what makes you American. I think it's almost impossible. Actually, let's go back. Let's go to first principles. What is American culture? Is it apple pies and hot dogs?
I hear that kind of talk when Americans talk shit to British people.
Well, yeah, it's mostly like y'all fucking failed. We revolted, and this type of thing. I get that, but I've never heard anyone prop up American culture like Koreans or,
I think it exists. I think it's out there. I think it was more popular when we were younger. I think it's a dying thing now because they make it sound like so negative. Like, oh, make America great again. Oh, that's so bad. Like, wait, what's wrong with that? I think there is a huge section of the country that want America to remain America, to be what kind of it was based on, which is the idea of political freedom, religious freedom, the idea of acceptance, and the ability to kind of live the life the way you want to live your life. That the government should, no taxation without representation, that we should be able to live and choose the way we live our lives, and that we should be accepting of it. I think a lot of people still adhere to that. It's just that people who think that way have now been villainized, right?
They've been villainized on the race issue.
I think in general.
Are they villainized on the American culture issue?
I think so too.
I think the greatest and most obvious negative social commentary on American culture that is easily found and easily seen is from the Arab world. The Arab world, and you can find video clips, no problem, of people in the Arab world saying we hate American culture because it's hedonistic, it's materialistic, godless. You've heard these things, right? But when was the last time you heard a Japanese person say we hate American culture because it's hedonistic, it's godless? There's so much wrapped in the, let's say, the Islamic, Muslim, and Arab world that is religious culture that is reeling against the truly hedonistic American culture. And so I think you have to abstract what are we making judgment calls? Are we making judgment calls based on race or culture? Because if it's culture, I think American culture is the hodgepodge. I think American culture today is a multiculturalism worldview where it's like everybody's accepted. Come to America, Statue of Liberty. You can, earn money here. You can make a good life here. Roads still paved with gold. We still have millions of people coming into America every month, because they want a better life or whatever. Like, I think American culture is a melting pot of acceptance. I think where people give pause and people give critiques is the race issue, not the culture issue. Does that make sense?
I think it's both. And I think there are a huge segment of people that are trying to create their own cultures and values and historical cultures. For example, if you went to a certain school, I went to Ohio State. I met a lot of people that are like 4th, 5th, 6th generation Ohio State because that's what you do.
That's what
your family does.
Yeah, I get it.
And on Saturdays, the family gathers and you have to watch the game.
You got to worship at the altar of the Ohio State game.
Regardless of what it is, because at the end of the day, aren't all traditions some sort of worship to something?
Not wrong.
But so there are ways for people to create their own culture. There's nothing that says culture has to be a certain way, has to be a certain age, and that has to be started from one person. Really, it's about your family's culture and what you create for your family moving forward. And I feel like I'm flip-flopping all day today. But
me too, but I don't.
I think it's just a part of thinking through.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's us. I mean, let's be honest.
We're exploring.
We're tackling issues that, frankly, in many cases, we're ill prepared for.
Yes.
But number two,
and what a lot of people aren't willing to talk about.
That was my second part. We are willing to struggle bus it so that we can become better thinkers and free thinkers. If you never think about it, then you can't tell me that you're a free thinker because you're not pushing the boundaries of your models, right? And so that's what I appreciate about these conversations is for those who are listening, by the way, smash the like button. But secondly, we have come to no determination of right or wrong.
I have no idea. If anything, I'm more confused now than I was in the beginning. However, and that's okay, I enjoyed the exercise.
That's okay though, because these exercises are valuable for our personal lives. I got kids, you got kids, right? There are going to be cultural implications, traditions implications, worldview implications that we care about for our personal lives and the families that we're creating. And have these conversations is going to better inform us as we start making those decisions as our kids get older and as we grow our families. And I think that's important for us. So I'm okay with this. I enjoy these conversations because it's rare that you can have conversations like this where you're not getting pissed off at me. You don't want to pull a gun out on me because I'm telling you one thing. Like people get all hot and bothered about this shit. I don't think there's no need to get hot and bothered about it.
I was gonna my wife and daughter are going to Korea in I think a week and a half.
Oh, really? I thought
they're gonna go for 3 weeks.
I thought you said they were gonna.
Well, they were gonna go for 2 months, and then all of a sudden we moved, so they pushed it back, and they're only gonna go for 3 weeks now. And originally, I told them I was not gonna go because I got shit to do here. Now, after our conversation today, I'm like, damn, maybe I should go too.
You should go.
It's 3 weeks long. It's a long time to go.
Let's do it.
Kayade.
So I originally was not going to go. I was going to work. I was going to pump out some content, maybe do a bunch of stuff here. And now talking about culture, talking about the significance of it, maybe I should go.
Kayade.
It's 3 weeks. And I'm buying a ticket, international ticket, like 1 week before. I just bought a house. I have no money. Where am I gonna get out of this? Oh, my wife just ordered patio furniture.
Let me give you
patio furniture is so expensive.
Dude, IKEA, bro.
No, you can't because we live on a lake, so there's so much crosswind that if you buy like not expensive patio furniture, it's just gonna blow off and fall into the lake.
So can I give you? I don't think you've ever been to my house.
I've been to your house.
Have I? Have you?
Of course.
Have you?
Can you invite me again if you don't remember the last time I was there?
Oh, what I mean by have you been on my patio?
I don't remember.
So we used to have a lot of patio furniture. Fucking bullshit. Don't waste money on that shit. No one fucking uses. All it does is get pollinated, and then your wife gets pissed off because all the pollen's in the fucking cushions and shit. Like, don't do it. Don't buy any patio furniture. Just buy flip chairs that when you want to go hang out on the patio, you use a flip chair that's plastic. It's super easy. Don't waste any money on that bullshit.
When you come to my house, you'll see why we need.
Okay. Maybe I'm just missing the context here. But let's move on to the thing that I think you should absolutely go to Korea. And I say this from my own yearning. So the last time we went to Korea was, I think, 2 years ago, right before the lockdowns, which was just perfect timing before everything got crazy. And I absolutely loved it. I loved going back with my family as my kids get older. So we've been there several times now with the kids, and just being able to watch them grow up and see Korea every other year or so has just been an amazing experience. It is a little bit of suffering because you have young kids, but it only gets easier. And let me put it this way. I yearn for more opportunities to travel back to my homeland, and show my family, my kids, meeting relatives, et cetera, et cetera. So if I were in your position, it's a long-winded way of saying absolutely take the opportunity. And if there's one outcome, you can take a little bit of B-roll, put it together. TikTok or Instagram can do it all for you. You don't even have to get really ridiculous. And you just create a 2.5, 3 minute, kind of like the reel we just watched earlier of Joa and her Dor. You just put together, hey, here's 7 minutes of my 3 weeks in Korea, guys. Fucking enjoy,
My mother-in-law owns a convenience store at GS13. So I was just going to live stream from there. People buying stuff.
Dude, really?
Yeah, why not? I was going to. If I went.
She has a convenience store.
Yeah.
The best fucking, if you don't know, the best treats and snacks on the planet, I would take you to task, are in Korean. It's a convenience stores.
Well, maybe you guys can see it. If I go, I think 3 weeks is too long. Maybe I'll just do like a week.
Triangle kimbaps that you can buy there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So good.
Maybe I'll just do a week.
Banana uyu.
Yeah.
The dargi, the strawberry. Oh.
It's just sugar water.
Yeah, but it tastes so good.
Well, hopefully this expanded your view, gets you thinking about other cultures, the importance of culture to us, the kind of struggles that we have in thinking about it. Because as we try to adapt our entire family, our family history to what American culture is becoming, this is the type of stuff we have to think about. Because it's not easy. It's hard to figure it out. You want to assimilate. You want to be a part of what's going on here. This is where we live. This is where our kids live. This is where they will continue to live. This is where we'll be forever. At the same time, trying to integrate it with where we came from, what we understand, and the importance of why it's important to remember where we came from. Trying to lock all that together, it's not easy.
It's not easy. And if I could say one thing, it would be this. I don't see culture as an either or. I see culture as a yes and, which is culture can be additive. I think it's okay, and I think it's okay to retain core cultural considerations and traditions that you care about. Peace. We all get that. But your culture can also be expanded as a yes and. I enjoy this, and I've learned this, and I appreciate this. I think where we get into tension and conflict and invariably killing each other is when we see culture as an either or, right? We're seeing that in Palestine and Gaza and Israel and the Arab world right now, is they look at it as a black and white. Bro, you and I have lived long enough. Rarely is life black and white.
Next week, maybe we'll finally get to actually talk about the war in the Middle East. I'm sure it'll still be there.
From the last I checked, they're about 20,000 years deep. So yeah, probably.
And maybe I wanted to touch on Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, Bitcoin's booming, guys.
We'll talk about that next week also.
It's at $34,000 today. So which means the next time that we talk about it, you might have missed a significant pump.
Or it could be back
dump.
to 20.
Could be. Let you buy it, which you buy more. But let me say this then. Final saying on the Bitcoin. It's $34,000 a day. If you don't believe that it could double, it must be your first rodeo. Welcome to the fucking show.
And if you don't think it could drop in half, it's all your first rodeo.
Welcome to the fucking show.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
This is not financial advice.
It was good.
It's good.
Totally not what we were planning.